It's warping time, friends. Why, hello, and welcome back to Warped, Work in Progress. Today it is all about warping, my friends, all about warping. There's a couple of different ways that we could measure out the warp. We already know and have calculated that we need 168 ends across our weed because we're doing... I'm taking those 168 ends and I want my placemat to be striped. And so I chose a pattern with 18 threads per set. And I figured out I'm gonna have 9 sets of my pattern, but there's this 6 left over. I'm adding 3 extra threads to each side, and that'll give me 21 on each side, which will give me my total of 168 threads. So that's what we are going to do today. We're going to measure out 168 ends. Now I'm going to be using a warping board and a warping mill. I prefer the warping mill because if I'm going to dress a loom, I make as much yardage as I can. But for this project, we're just making enough to do our 2 placemats. First thing you're going to want to do is get a contrasting yarn color, because you're going to make what's called your guide yarn, which is going to be 71 inches long. Here is my guide string that I laid out. Now, I think 73 would be plenty because you want to cut a little bit extra because you're going to tie it on to your warping board or your warping mill. You take the end of your thread, you make a loop, tie the slip knot onto the first peg, and then you go around your warping board. You go over and under and around, and you measure out the pattern you're going to take, so you have 71 inches. And I'm ready to measure out the string that I chose for my placemat. Wind this on, don't tie it, and then follow your guide string. Okay, now when I get here and I wrap it around, do you see how this goes on that side of the peg? I want this one to go on the other side. And that way, as you do, it's the same on this top one. This one went under, so this one's going over. This one went over, so this one's going under. And that's because when you do that, you get this nice cross of your threads, and your threads will stay in order. So as we do those 168 threads, we're going to crisscross every single one of them, so that way they'll lay on top of each other, and that's how you get your warp to have good tension, stay nice and tight. You make sure that you keep your crosses in order. Again, since this one went on the bottom, this one goes on top, and so this one went on top, this one goes on the bottom. So now I'm going to count them because I have to remember I only need 21. So when I count them, oh look, I did 2 crosses. Oh, well, you only need 1, I did 2. That's okay, no harm, no foul. I'm gonna count the threads, and when you count them, you actually have to count one side because the other side has a thread too. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's 21 threads of purple thread. You can see I missed the cross in a couple of places, but that's okay. So now I'm gonna do my yellow thread, or my green thread. finished warp. Each of our colors has 18 individual threads, except for the first one that has 21. Because remember, we're doing 9 sets of 18 threads and then 2 sets of 21 to make our 168. And we don't want to lose these beautiful crosses. So we are going to keep them by tying them. Yes, we're going to keep those beautiful crosses, and we're going to take our contrasting color again and loop it through one side, and then take it and loop it through the other side of the cross, and then you just tie a bow. And that'll keep your crosses nice and tight and in order, and all those strings will stay in the exact same order as when you measured them out. And then you do the exact same thing on the other 2 crosses, the one on the top, because we have 2 crosses on the top, and then the one on the end. And now your warp is secure. We did a little bit less than half of our warp on the warping board. And this time around, I'm going to use my warping mill, which is a lot quicker for me. It spins, and then that's how you do your warp. And this can hold so much more yardage. I should look up how much yardage. I think it's 24 yards or something like that. The most I've ever warped is 18 yards. So I have my guide string, make the loop and tie it on to this part of the warping mill. Then this has these little things, and they have screws, and then you screw it in to tighten it. So these clamp onto here. So you can put them anywhere, depending on how long you're making your warp. Yeah. See, I barely have enough here. I don't even think I'm going to be able to make my loop at the end. So I'll make my loop here, but go to the end. And this one's going to be a little bit longer than the ones on the warping board, but sometimes that's how it goes when I weave. Weaving's supposed to be so mathematical, and everything's supposed to come out so even and balanced, and you know, quite honest, sometimes when I weave it doesn't, but that's okay. I'm amazed at the master weavers that I see online. Okay, so there's my guide string, and I did purple, green, blue, purple, so my next color is green. So I'm gonna double counted. I'm pretty sure I have 18 in each set. And we are still not done measuring out our warp. There is one more step. We need to take it off of our measuring apparatuses, whether you're using a mill or a board. And then we're going to get ready to put it on a loom. Fun, fun. Okay, so the first thing is cut off all of your extra stripes. This is the last of my string, but I made this tail really wide because we're going to put what we call choke ties on it, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. So these little pieces of string I keep. These are the ends of the skeins that I bought, and I keep them because evidently I'm collecting little Ziploc baggies with all kinds of odds and ends of strings. The first kind of choke tie we went over on the warping board, and that's where you feed one end through this side of your cross, and one end side of your cross and you just tie it.
And you do the same thing for all of your other crosses on the mill.
Our cross beams are secure, where each individual thread goes above and over and under each other. That's secure here with these ties that we just did. Okay? And yes, all of these are a mistake. So I wasn't really diligent on my warping, but you'll make mistakes in weaving and you have to go with it. I'm not going to unwarp everything so I can get these 10 threads up there. But my master weaver Gertie would have said to do that. Now I want to take it off, but I want to make sure that all of these threads kind of stay somewhat in order, because I just have them, you know, secured at the front and the back, start and finish. There's a couple of more ways, and these are called choke ties, and all it does is just secure the warp. And I'm going to use just a hair tie, a rubber band.
And if you take it and loop the rubber band through itself and pull tight, that'll hold your warp nice and firm so those strings stay in order, which is what you want.
You can just tie a bow, and that'll hold it. It's just to secure them. Oh, very important, you need one here at the very end. You need a choke tie. And I have one rubber band left. Okay. I have it here and here at the end, and then the cross here, because we want to do all of our crosses. And then just a couple of choke ties on the warp itself. So when we take it off, okay, we're going to do what's called a crochet chain. And I'm going to show you here, and then I'll show you again
on the warping board
close up. So on my mill,
I'm just going to unscrew it in the back and take it off, and I will have the loop in my hand.
And this is the end of it. So there's this loop, because we only are supposed to have one cross here, remember, because it's the end. Here's the loop. So I'm going to put my hand through the loop, and I'm going to grab that warp, and I'm just going to pull it through like that. Here is one half of our warp. We're getting closer to putting it on our loom. This is the last of measuring out our warp for our placemats. I'm taking the other half of the warp off the warping board. Don't forget your choke ties. I'm using rubber band.
Once you're all secure, you're ready to take it off of your warping board. So you take it off of the pegs, you put your hand through the last loop and pull it through to make that crochet chain. And then we're done.
That is the end of measuring out our warp. The next step is to actually put it on the loom. So next time we're going to be slaying the reed and dressing the loom, and we're going to weave some stuff. I promise, it's coming.
I hope you enjoyed learning how to measure and prepare your warp using a warping board and a warping mill. Next step is to dress the loom. If you want to learn more about me or want to support more free weaving tutorials, visit my Patreon page or website. You can find me at warpedaworkinprogress.com or patreon.com warpedaworkinprogress. And of course, all the free weaving tutorials can be found on my YouTube channel. My next tutorial will cover putting the warp on the loom or dressing the loom. I promise reeving is coming, my friends. It's right around the corner. I can't wait to weave some stuff.